I thought I was overreacting. That's what kept running through my head as I sat in my car, staring at the video my coworker had secretly recorded of me at a grocery store. I watched myself limp down the aisle, grab a cart, lean on it, nothing dramatic, just a bad pain day, but there it was on her phone, taken from a distance. She defollowed me. She defollowed me after work to prove I wasn't really disabled. Let me back up. I'm a woman in my mid-30s and I live with chronic pain. Not the kind you see on a cast or a crutch every day. The kind where you learn to hide it so people don't treat you like you're fragile. On a normal good day, my pain sits around a 4 out of 10. That's manageable. I can work, I can laugh, I can walk without a cane. On a bad day, it hits a 7 or higher. That's when I pull out my canes, use my handicap placard, and let myself be slow. I have 2 jobs. My main one is full-time, but I also work part-time as an assistant coordinator at a retail location close to my home. I moved there about 6 months ago because the store expanded and needed extra hands. My boss, Amy, is amazing. She's supportive, understanding, and she knows about my condition because I filed all the necessary paperwork for accommodations. The problem is my coworker, Casey. Casey and I share the same position, assistant coordinator. We're supposed to be a team, but Casey has wanted a promotion for as long as I've known her. She's ambitious, which is fine. I, on the other hand, have zero interest in moving up. My part-time job is just extra income and keeps me busy, which helps with my anxiety. I was open about that from day one, so when I got moved to her location, she saw me as a threat, not a teammate. It started small. She'd question my breaks, comment on how I sat down during slow moments. She once told Amy, "I just don't think she's pulling her weight." Amy shut that down quick, reminding her that I'm disabled and that my accommodations are legally binding. Casey smiled, said she understood, but I could feel the resentment building. Then came the day everything changed. I had a flare-up on a Sunday. My pain level was hovering around an 8. I could barely stand straight. So I grabbed my cane, put my handicap placard on the dash, and drove to the grocery store. Just needed milk and bread. I moved slow. I leaned on the cart. I sat on a bench in the produce section for a few minutes. It was a normal disabled person doing normal things, except Casey was there, not shopping. She was in the next aisle over, phone out, recording me. I didn't find out until 2 days later when my boss, Amy, called me into her office. She looked uncomfortable. She said Casey had come to her with a video. She said Casey claimed it proved I was faking my disability because I could walk without my cane for parts of the video, and because I was walking fine when I got out of my car. Amy told me she hadn't watched the whole thing yet, but she wanted to hear my side. I felt sick. I didn't scream. I just sat there trying to breathe. She followed me to the grocery store. She recorded me outside of work. Amy nodded. She said she was just trying to clarify things for the team. I asked to see the video. Amy showed me. It was about 4 minutes long. It started with me getting out of my car, gripping the door, steadying myself. Then I took a few steps without my cane because I'd left it on the passenger seat and had to go back for it. Then I grabbed the cane, limped inside, grabbed a cart. The rest of the video was just me shopping, leaning, sitting. At one point I stood up to reach for something on a high shelf and Casey's voice whispered, "Look at that, no cane." I told Amy I needed to report this, not just to HR but to the police, because what Casey did wasn't just workplace harassment, it was stalking. It was an invasion of privacy. Amy agreed and said she would support me fully. I filed a police report that afternoon. The officer listened, took down the details, and then told me almost apologetically that without a clear threat or ongoing pattern, they probably wouldn't press charges. He said it was more of a civil matter. I left the station feeling like I'd just been told that being followed and recorded without consent is okay because I'm black and disabled and in Texas, and apparently that combination doesn't get you taken seriously. Back at work, HR got involved. They interviewed me, then Casey. Casey claimed she was just looking out for the team and that she had concerns about my performance. She said she didn't follow me, she just happened to be at the same store. When I pointed out that the store was 15 minutes from her house and 10 from mine, she said she was trying a new route. HR didn't buy it. They put her on suspension pending investigation, but the damage was done, word spread. Other coworkers started looking at me differently. Some whispered. One person actually asked me, "So are you really disabled or just lazy?" I reported that too. The atmosphere turned toxic. Then came the update a few weeks later. Casey was fired. Apparently she'd done this before at a previous job, recorded a coworker with a visible limp to prove they were exaggerating. That company had settled. This time my company decided to pursue legal action against her for violating my privacy and creating a hostile work environment. I felt a small relief, but mostly I felt exhausted. I never asked to be a symbol. I just wanted to do my job and go home. That was the first story. It taught me that some people will go to incredible lengths to tear you down when they feel threatened. But the second story I have for you is a different kind of warning. It's about a friend who thought he knew his fiancée and about how sometimes the people closest to you can blind you to the truth. This one starts with a simple question. Should I tell my best friend not to marry her? I never thought I'd be the person who tries to stop a wedding. But here I am, a month out, and I don't know if I should say something. My friend Mark has been my closest friend since college. We met freshman year in a philosophy class. He argued with the professor about free will for 20 minutes, then turned to me and asked if I wanted to grab a beer. That was Mark. Loud, opinionated, fiercely loyal. We've been through everything together, failed relationships, career changes, the death of his dad. I know him better than anyone. He met Laura in grad school about 6 years ago. She was quiet, shy, almost mousy. I remember thinking, okay, opposites attract. Mark has a huge personality. He talks with his hands, interrupts, debates everything. Laura would just sit there and smile. For the first few years, I had zero problems with her. She seemed sweet. My girlfriend Julie and I would double date with them, go to concerts, cook dinners. It was normal. Then around year 4 of their relationship, Laura started opening up. At first I thought it was great. She got more comfortable, cracked jokes, joined conversations. But slowly I realized what she was opening up about. Every time we all hung out, she'd bring up some complaint about the wedding. Not big stuff, the color of the napkins, the fact that Mark's mom wanted to invite her bridge club. She'd go on, even when Mark clearly wanted to drop it. One night at dinner, Mark's parents had offered to pay for the rehearsal dinner, a really generous gesture. Laura spent 20 minutes complaining that the restaurant they chose was too casual. Mark just stared at his plate, not saying a word. Then it got worse. She started airing their dirty laundry in front of us. At Julie's birthday party, she brought up that Mark hadn't been sleeping well and then started detailing how he snored, how he ground his teeth, how she'd had to move to the guest room. Mark tried to laugh it off, but his face was red. Later that night, Julie said to me, "Did you see how he looked? She's humiliating him." I started noticing the cruelty too, the way she'd correct his grammar in front of other people. The way she'd roll her eyes when he told a story. Once at a barbecue, Mark was explaining a work project and she cut him off with, "Honey, nobody cares about your little spreadsheet drama." He just stopped talking. I looked around the table. Everyone was quiet. It was like watching a dog get kicked. But the core issue, the one that kept me up at night, was about something fundamental. I'd known for a while that Mark wanted kids. He'd talked about it since we were in our 20s. "I want to be a dad, I want to coach soccer," all that corny stuff. Laura always deflected. Then one night, about 8 months before the wedding, Julie and I were at their apartment for a game night. Laura had a few glasses of wine and she started talking about an article she'd read about child-free lifestyles. She said, "I just don't get why people feel pressured to have kids, like it's not for everyone." Mark didn't respond, but I saw his jaw tighten. Later, after Laura went to bed, Mark walked Julie and me out. He seemed off. I asked if everything was okay. He said, "She told me last week she doesn't want kids, ever." I thought we were on the same page, but she says she's always felt this way and just didn't say anything. I asked what he was going to do. He said, "We're getting married in 3 months. I love her. Maybe she'll change her mind." I didn't know what to say, but then came the open relationship thing. Julie and I heard it from a mutual friend who'd gone to a bachelorette party. Laura got drunk and told the whole table that after the wedding she wanted to explore an open arrangement because she felt like she'd settled down too young. She said Mark was too traditional and that she needed more freedom. When the friend asked if Mark knew, Laura just laughed and said, "He'll come around." That was when I knew I had to do something. I called Mark and asked him to meet me for coffee. We sat at the same diner we'd been going to since college. I told him everything. About the kids thing, about the open relationship comment, about how she treated him in public. I said, "Mark, I love you like a brother. I think you're making a mistake." He got quiet. Then he got angry. He said I was overstepping, that Laura was just stressed that she loved him. He said, "You don't know her like I do. She's not like that." He left the coffee half drunk. I thought I'd lost him. 2 weeks later, he called me. His voice was shaking. He said he'd confronted Laura about the open relationship comment. She admitted it was true. She said she loved him but felt trapped, that she wanted to see other people, that kids were out of the question. He asked her to go to counseling. She said no. Then she said maybe we should postpone the wedding. He said maybe we should call it off. He cried, and then she packed a bag and went to her sister's place. The wedding was never rescheduled. Mark spent a few months in a fog, but eventually he started coming around. He thanked me for telling him, even though it hurt. He said, "I was so blind. I thought if I loved her enough, it would fix everything." I told him love isn't a magic wand. It's been a year now. Mark is dating someone new. She's loud, argumentative, and she laughs at all his terrible jokes. He looks happy. I'm glad I said something, but I still wonder, what if I hadn't? What if he'd walked down that aisle? He'd be trapped, maybe divorced within a year, maybe with a kid he didn't plan. I don't regret it, not one bit. But that wasn't the only time I had to speak up that year. Right around when Mark was starting to heal, my own situation at work was taking a turn for the worse. I thought reporting Casey to HR would be the end of it. I was wrong. A few days after Casey's suspension, I got a call from a detective at the local police department. The HR manager had filed a report on my behalf because stalking is a crime in our state, and since Casey had followed me to a store, recorded me without consent, and used that footage to harass me, the company wanted law enforcement involved. I was grateful but also terrified. I'd never had to deal with the police before. The detective asked me to come in and give a statement. I drove to the station, my hands shaking on the wheel. The officer who took my statement was a middle-aged white man with a tired face. He asked me to describe the chronic pain condition, what I could and couldn't do, why I used a cane some days and not others. I explained it as best I could. He listened, then said, "So you don't actually need the handicap placard every day?" I felt a cold knot in my stomach. "I need it on bad days, that's how it works." He nodded slowly. We'll look into it. I left the station feeling like I'd been forced to defend my own body. Later, I learned that Casey had shown up at the station too with a printout of my Instagram posts. She'd highlighted pictures of me hiking, kayaking, dancing at a wedding, all from good days. She told the police I was a fraud, that I was scamming the system. The detective called me and asked me to come back for a follow-up. That meeting was worse. He sat across from me with a file folder. You understand why this looks suspicious, right? You claim to be disabled, but here you are doing all these activities. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a breath and said, the disability isn't that I can't move, it's that I'm in constant pain. On good days, I manage. On bad days, I need the cane and the placard. That's literally what chronic means. He didn't look convinced. He said, we'll keep the report open, but I'm not sure there's enough for a stalking charge. I asked about the video. She recorded me without consent in a public place where I had a reasonable expectation of privacy. He shrugged. Public place. She was in a public parking lot. I left the station that day feeling like the system was built to protect the abuser. I was a black woman in Texas with a disability trying to convince the police that a white coworker had crossed a line. I knew the odds, but I wasn't ready to give up. Meanwhile, at work, the tension was unbearable. Casey was still suspended, but she was fighting the termination. She sent an email to our entire department from her personal account, accusing me of faking my condition, calling me a liar and a thief of accommodations that real disabled people need. HR told us to ignore it, but people talked. One of my coworkers, a guy named Dave, pulled me aside and said, look, I believe you, but you gotta admit it's weird how you can hike one weekend and then use a cane on Monday. I told him, it's almost like you don't understand chronic pain. I hope you never have to understand it. The company lawyer contacted me. He said they were preparing a civil suit against Casey for invasion of privacy and intentional infliction of emotional distress. They also found out that she had done this before. At her previous job, she had recorded a coworker with a visible limp and sent the video to their boss, claiming the coworker was faking to get lighter duties. That company had settled quietly with the victim, but my company wasn't going to settle. They wanted to make an example. I gave deposition after deposition. I had to recount every detail, the day I saw her by my car, the weird questions, the trip to the store. I cried in the lawyer's office more than once. I felt like I was being re-traumatized every time. Finally, 6 weeks after the initial report, Casey was formally terminated, not just suspended, fired with cause. The company sent a company-wide email stating that harassment and invasion of privacy would not be tolerated, but they didn't mention Casey by name. Still, everyone knew. Some people congratulated me, others avoided my eyes. The police report never went anywhere. The detective called to say they were closing the investigation due to insufficient evidence. I didn't fight it. I was too tired, but the legal action went through. Casey had to pay a fine and attend a harassment awareness course. My company also donated a sum to a disability advocacy group in my name. That felt hollow, but I took it. The whole experience changed me. I used to think that if I just explained myself clearly, people would understand. But some people don't want to understand. They want to believe you're faking because it's easier than admitting that life is unfair and that pain is invisible and that disability doesn't always look like a wheelchair. Now, when I use my cane, I hold my head high. And when I see someone staring, I stare back. Casey lost her job, but she also took something from me, the innocence of believing that my body would not be used as a weapon against me. I've been going to therapy, I've started a journal, and I've learned that sometimes standing up for yourself feels like standing alone. But you're not alone, there are people who see you, who believe you, like my boss Amy, who told me after it was all over, you did the right thing, it shouldn't have been this hard. No, it shouldn't have, but it was, and I survived. That's the thing about both of these stories. Whether it's a fiancé hiding her true intentions or a coworker secretly filming you, the common thread is that people lie. They lie to get what they want. They lie to protect their image. And sometimes the only way to find the truth is to speak up, even when it costs you. Mark found his truth. He's dating a woman named Sophie now, and she's everything Laura was. She argues with him about politics, she laughs at his dumb jokes, and she's already talking about adopting a dog and maybe someday having a kid. Mark told me last week that he thinks he dodged a bullet. I told him he dodged a train, and me, I still have chronic pain. I still have good days and bad days, but I no longer have a coworker who treats me like a fraud. That's a win, however small. So if you're reading this and wondering whether to speak up about your body, your relationship, your job, do it. It might not change everything, but it will change something, and sometimes that's enough. And that's what I kept telling myself. But the truth didn't stop haunting me. It was about 3 weeks after Casey got fired. I was driving home from a therapy session when my phone buzzed. It was my boss, Amy. Hey, can you come in tomorrow a little early? We need to talk about something that came up with the legal team. My stomach dropped. I thought maybe Casey had appealed. I thought maybe they were blaming me for something. I showed up at 7:30 a.m., coffee in hand, my cane leaning against my desk because I'd woken up at a solid 7 on the pain scale. Amy sat me down in the conference room. The company lawyer, a sharp woman named Denise, was already there. We found something, Denise said. While we were going through Casey's work computer, we discovered she had a folder labeled evidence. It contained videos and photos of you from at least 6 different occasions, some from the parking lot, some from when you went to the grocery store, even one from a doctor's appointment you had 2 months ago. I felt the blood drain from my face. She followed me to my doctor, she did, and she also had a document where she listed every time you used your cane versus not using it with timestamps. She was tracking you like a project. Amy reached over and put her hand on my arm. We've already reported this to the police again. The detective we spoke to this time seemed more interested, because it's not just the one incident, it's a pattern. I didn't cry, I think I was too numb. But later that night I sat in my car in the garage and sobbed, because it wasn't just about proving I was disabled. It was about control. She wanted to prove she was right no matter what it cost me. The new police report led to a warrant. They seized her phone and laptop, and that's when they found messages between Casey and a former coworker from her old job. The coworker she had done the same thing to, a man named Derek who walked with a limp after a car accident. Casey had written to him, "I can't believe they let you get away with it again, I'll do it better this time." Derek was contacted by the police. He agreed to testify if it went to court. I never met him, but we exchanged a few emails. He told me he'd been dealing with anxiety and depression ever since Casey ruined his reputation at his old job. "I thought I was alone," he wrote. "I'm sorry you had to go through it too." That email broke something in me, not in a bad way. It was like I finally saw the bigger picture. Casey wasn't just a jealous coworker, she was a predator who got off on exposing people's vulnerabilities. The legal case dragged on for months. Depositions, hearings, mediation. Eventually, Casey agreed to a settlement. She had to pay me a significant amount, enough that I could take a month off work to actually heal. She also had to undergo psychiatric evaluation and was barred from working in any supervisory role for 5 years. It wasn't prison, but it was something. My company, to their credit, implemented mandatory disability awareness training for all employees. I was asked to speak at the first session. I stood in front of a room full of people I used to trust, holding my cane, and I told them what it was like to have a body that betrayed you and a coworker who weaponized your pain. I saw some of them crying. I saw Dave, the guy who asked if it was weird that I could hike looking at the floor. After the session, he came up to me. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't understand. I thought I was just asking a question, but I was being an asshole." I shook his hand. "Now you know, that was a year ago." I still have bad days. I still have to explain myself to strangers who see my handicap placard and glare. But I also have a community now. I volunteer with a chronic pain support group. I'm writing a blog about invisible disabilities. I'm not hiding anymore. And then there was Mark. I told you I spoke up to him. I did, but I didn't tell you how it happened. It was a Thursday night about 3 weeks before the wedding. Julie and I had invited Mark over for dinner. We made his favorite chicken parmesan. He was in good spirits, talking about the honeymoon plans, the venue, the tux fitting. I let him talk, but my heart was pounding. After Julie cleared the plates, I said, "Mark, I need to tell you something, and you're not going to like it." He laughed. "You're not going to tell me the wedding's off, are you?" I didn't laugh. I told him everything, the arguments I'd witnessed, the way Laura talked about his parents, the fundamental disagreement about kids that she had been avoiding for years. I told him I loved him and I didn't want to see him make a mistake. He sat there, staring at the table. "You don't know her like I do," he said quietly. "Maybe not, but I know what I've seen. And I know what you've told me when you were drunk and honest." He got up and left, didn't say goodbye. Julie hugged me and said I did the right thing, but I wasn't sure. The next day he called me. I asked her about the kids thing. She said she didn't want to talk about it, so I pushed, and she finally admitted she never wanted kids. She thought she could change my mind after we were married. I heard him exhale. She also said she hates my mom and thinks she's controlling, and that she's been secretly taking birth control even though we agreed to start trying after the wedding. I didn't say "I told you so." I just listened. He called off the wedding 3 days later. Laura went ballistic. She called me a homewrecker. She sent vicious texts to Julie. She spread rumors in their social circle that I was in love with Mark and had made the whole thing up. Some of our mutual friends took her side. I lost a few people that year. But Mark, he's doing great. He's with Sophie now and they just adopted a rescue dog. He told me last week, "You saved my life, I mean it." I don't know if I saved his life, but I know I saved him from a decade of misery, and I'll take that, so that's where I am now. Still dealing with the fallout of both situations. Still carrying the weight of knowing that speaking up can cost you friendships, your sense of safety, even your peace of mind. But I also know that silence costs more. I'd rather be the one who said something than the one who stood by and let it happen. And if you're reading this and your gut is telling you something is wrong, listen to it. Whether it's your own body or the gut feeling about a friend's relationship, the truth is you already know. You just have to be brave enough to act on it. I found that out the hard way. My name is not important, but my story is. I work a full-time accounting job and a part-time gig at a retail chain because I like the discount and it gets me out of the house. I've had chronic pain for about 7 years now. I was in a car accident that messed up my lower back and left hip. Some days I can walk just fine. Other days I need a cane and a handicap placard just to get through the grocery store without collapsing. My coworker, we'll call her Casey, was an assistant coordinator at the retail job. She wanted a promotion to full-time coordinator. I didn't. I told everyone that. I was there because I liked it, not because I needed the money or the title. But Casey saw me as competition anyway. She'd make comments about how interesting it was that I could go hiking on Saturday but limp on Monday. I'd just shrug and say, yeah, that's chronic pain for you. But that wasn't good enough for her. She started watching me, not in a casual way, in a way that made my skin crawl. One Sunday, I was having a really bad day, pain level of 7 or 8. I drove to Walmart with my cane and my placard. I was shuffling through the parking lot when I saw Casey's car. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. But then I saw her phone pointed at me. I didn't confront her then. I was too tired. But I called my boss, Amy, on Monday and told her what I saw. Amy said she'd talk to Casey. She did. Casey denied it, said I was being paranoid, made it sound like I was crazy. I let it go. I thought I was overreacting. Then 2 weeks later, I was leaving my doctor's office. I'd had an appointment to adjust my pain meds. I was feeling rough. I leaned on my cane as I walked to my car. And I saw it again, a flash from a phone. This time I was sure. I turned around and saw Casey ducking behind a pillar. That was when everything changed. I didn't scream. I walked straight to my car, locked the door, and called HR. I told them everything. The parking lot, the doctor's appointment, the comments at work. I told them I wanted it investigated. HR took it seriously. They pulled Casey into a meeting. She admitted to recording me but said she was just concerned that I was abusing disability benefits. She said she wanted to prove I didn't really need the placard. She said it was just a little investigation. I wish I could say management fired her on the spot, but they didn't. They gave her a warning, said next time would be different. I thought about quitting, but I was angry. And I was tired of being angry alone, so I went to the police. I filed a report for harassment and invasion of privacy. The officer looked at me like I was wasting his time. Ma'am, she took a video in a public place. That's not illegal. I said. She followed me to my doctor. He shrugged. Unless you have proof she was stalking you on multiple occasions, there's not much we can do. I left the station feeling sick. That night, I called my mom. She told me to drop it. You're only making it worse, she said. People like her always get away with it. But my husband, John, was furious. We're not dropping it, he said. She's been following you. We're going to catch her. So we set up a plan. I started parking in different spots. I varied my schedule. John installed a dashcam in my car that recorded front and back, and I kept a log. Every time I saw something suspicious, I wrote it down. 3 weeks later, John reviewed the dashcam footage. There it was, Casey's car following me from work to the grocery store, then from the grocery store to the pharmacy, then from the pharmacy to my house. She'd sit in her car down the street for 20 minutes before leaving. We took that footage to a different police station. A detective named Rivera looked at it and said, "This is enough for a harassment charge at the very least." They picked her up 2 days later. She denied everything until they showed her the footage. Then she broke down, said she was just trying to protect the company, said she didn't think I was really disabled, said she'd done it before. That's when they found Derek. Derek was a former coworker from Casey's old job. He walked with a limp after a car accident. Casey had done the same thing to him, followed him, filmed him, sent the videos to management. He lost his job over it. He never reported her because he was embarrassed and scared. When the police contacted him, he agreed to testify. I emailed him. He told me he'd been in therapy for years. He said, "I thought I was alone. I'm sorry you had to go through it too." That email broke me, not in a bad way. It was like I finally saw the whole picture. Casey wasn't just jealous. She wasn't just mean. She was a predator who needed to expose people to feel powerful. The legal case took 8 months. Depositions, mediation, back and forth. Eventually, Casey agreed to a settlement. She had to pay me $25,000. She had to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. She was barred from working in a supervisory role for 5 years, and she had to issue a formal apology to me and to Derek. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired, but I also felt heard. My company implemented mandatory disability awareness training. I was asked to speak at the first session. I stood in front of 50 people, some of whom I'd worked with for years, holding my cane. I told them what it was like to have a body that betrays you and a coworker who uses your pain as evidence. I saw people crying. I saw Dave, the one who'd made that comment about hiking, staring at the floor. Afterward, he came up to me. "I'm sorry," he said. "I thought I was just asking a question, but I was being an asshole." I shook his hand. "Now you know. That was 2 years ago. I still have bad days. I still use my cane. I still get the occasional glare from a stranger who sees my placard and doesn't believe me. But I'm not hiding. I volunteer with a chronic pain support group. I write a blog about invisible disabilities. I've spoken at 3 different companies about the reality of living with chronic pain in a workplace that wants proof. And Derek, he's doing better too. He got a new job. He reached out last month to say he'd started seeing someone. He said, "I don't know if I could have done that without seeing you stand up for yourself." I don't know about that, but I know we're both still standing. So when people ask me if speaking up is worth it, I always say yes, even when it costs you friendships. Even when it costs you peace. Because silence costs more. It costs you your dignity, your trust, your ability to feel safe in your own body. And that's a price I'll never pay again. I've known my friend Mark since college. We were in the same dorm, same study groups, same late-night arguments about philosophy and whether Die Hard is a Christmas movie. He's the kind of guy who always has to be right. Not in a mean way, he just can't let a bad argument stand. He's smart, intense, loyal. When he started dating Laura in grad school, I was happy for him. She was shy, quiet, a little mousy. She'd laugh at his jokes and nod along when he went on a rant. I figured they balanced each other out. For the first 4 years, I had zero complaints. My girlfriend Julie and I would double date with them. Laura would sit there, smile, sip her wine. She rarely spoke unless spoken to. Mark would do most of the talking. It worked. But then something shifted. Maybe it was when they got engaged. Maybe it was when she started hanging out with Julie more. She opened up. And what came out was not what I expected. It started small. She'd complain about Mark's parents. They offered to pay for the rehearsal dinner, and she acted like it was a personal insult. They just want to control everything, she'd say. Julie and I exchanged looks. We met Mark's parents. They were lovely, generous. But Laura turned every kind gesture into a conspiracy. Then the wedding planning got worse. She'd call Julie and vent for an hour about the centerpieces, about the cake, about how Mark's mom suggested a different flower arrangement, and that was proof she hates me. Julie started coming home from those calls looking drained. She's so anxious all the time, Julie said. She's worried Mark is going to leave her. She's always looking for signs. I didn't want to meddle. Mark is my friend. But I started noticing things when we all hung out. Laura would interrupt him, correct him, belittle him in front of us. At a dinner party, he talked about his new job project, and she said, "You always make everything about yourself." He shrugged it off, but I saw his face drop. Another time, she brought up a private fight they'd had about his old college friend crashing on their couch. She went into detail about how he was emotionally immature. Mark said, "Can we discuss this later?" And she snapped, "Why are you embarrassed?" The worst part was what I overheard at a barbecue. I was grabbing a beer from the cooler, and Laura was on the phone with her sister. She didn't know I was there. She said, "I just need to lock him down. Once we're married, we can sort out the rest. He'll change." The way she said it made my stomach turn. I told Julie that night, "I think he's making a mistake." Julie said, "He loves her. You can't tell him that." But then came the core issue. We were all at a pub after a concert. Laura had a few drinks. She started talking about her future. She said she wanted to travel, live in different cities, maybe try an open relationship. "I don't want to be stuck with a house and kids," she said. Mark went quiet. I saw his jaw tighten. Later, when she was in the bathroom, he said to us, "She knows I want kids. I've always wanted kids. We discussed it." Julie said, "Did you discuss it recently?" He shook his head. "When we got engaged, she said she was open to it. Now she says she was just people-pleasing. I don't know what to believe." That was a month before the wedding. I lay awake that night thinking about it. I thought about my own friends, my own relationships. I've been lucky. Julie and I are solid. We communicate. But Mark. He was about to marry a woman who lied about wanting kids, who trashed him in public, who talked about locking him down like he was a real estate deal. I decided I had to say something. I called him and asked to meet for coffee. We sat at a corner table. He looked tired. He said the last few weeks were hell. Laura was fighting with his mom, threatening to uninvite his best friend, crying every night that he didn't love her enough. "Mark," I said, "I'm going to say this as your friend. I think you should postpone the wedding." He didn't get angry. He just stared at his coffee. "Why?" So I told him. I told him about the phone call I overheard, about the open relationship comment, about how she belittled him in front of us, about the kids thing. He listened, and when I finished, he said, "I know. Then why are you going through with it?" He rubbed his face. "Because I love her and I'm scared of what happens if I don't." I said, "You're scared of being alone. That's not a reason to marry someone." He didn't answer. He said he'd think about it. We hugged. I went home and told Julie. She said, "You did the right thing, even if he doesn't listen." The next week was radio silence. I didn't hear from Mark. I kept checking my phone. Nothing. The wedding was 2 weeks away. Julie and I bought our outfits, but my heart wasn't in it. I felt like I was walking toward a car crash. Then 10 days before the wedding, Mark texted me, "Can you and Julie come over tonight? I need to talk." We went. He answered the door in sweatpants. The apartment was a mess. Laura wasn't there. He sat us down and said, "I called it off." I didn't even know what to say. He went on. "I talked to her about the kids thing. She said she would consider it if I agreed to an open relationship in 5 years. I said no. She said I was being controlling. She threw a glass at the wall. I packed a bag and left." Julie asked, "Are you okay?" "No, but I'm better than I would have been married to her." We ordered pizza. He cried. I cried a little too. He said Laura had called his parents and told them I was the reason he broke it off. His mom was worried. I offered to talk to her. He said, "Don't. She already knows the truth." Laura threatened to tell my work I abused her if I didn't take her back. I had to show my boss screenshots of texts proving she was lying. I felt sick. "She would have done that after the wedding too." He nodded. "I dodged a bullet. I just wish I'd seen it sooner." That was 6 months ago. Mark is in therapy now. He's not dating. He says he needs to figure out how he missed the signs. Laura moved to another state. I heard she got engaged again 3 months later. I hope that guy sees the red flags. I still think about whether I did the right thing. Some people say I should have stayed out of it. But I've watched too many friends stay silent while someone walked into disaster. I'd rather lose a friendship by telling the truth than keep it by letting him make a mistake that destroys his life. And if you're reading this and you're the one about to marry someone, listen to your gut. If they change who they are after you propose, that's not love, that's a plan. Mark sends me a text every now and then. Today he said, "Thanks for the coffee that day. You saved my life." I saved his maybe. But I think he saved himself. I just gave him permission to look. So yeah, I told my friend not to marry his fiancée. And I don't regret it for a second. I never thought a coworker would follow me around and film me to prove I'm not really disabled. But here we are. Let me start from the beginning. I'm a black woman in my late 20s living in Texas. I have a condition called chronic pain. It's not something you can see from the outside, and that's been the problem my whole life. I explain it to people like this. If pain is a scale from 1 to 10, most people wake up at a 1 or a 2. I wake up at a 6, every day. Imagine the soreness after you pull a muscle, that dull ache that nags you every time you move. That's my baseline. Some days I'm higher, some days I'm lower. On rare blessed days I'm a 4 and I feel like I can run a marathon. But most days I'm just managing. I have a full-time job and a part-time gig to pad my savings. My part-time job is at a large retail chain. I was recently moved to a new location closer to home, which was great. My new boss, Amy, is amazing. She's understanding, she never questions my accommodations, and she treats me like a human being. My coworker, Casey, though. That's where the trouble started. Casey and I are both assistant coordinators to Amy. Casey has been at this location for a few years and has been gunning for a promotion to a full-time supervisor role. I have zero interest in that promotion. I already have a full-time job. I do this part-time job because I like it and because busying myself helps with my anxiety. I was upfront about that from day one. But Casey didn't believe me. She saw me as competition. I have a handicap placard for my car. I have canes that I only use on days when my pain level hits 7 or above. On those days, walking without support is brutal, so I use a cane. I've filed all the proper paperwork with HR. Everyone at work knows I'm disabled legally and physically. Except Casey decided that wasn't good enough. It started with little comments. You seemed fine yesterday when you were walking around the mall. I saw you carrying a heavy box last week. Guess your pain wasn't that bad. I brushed it off. I thought she was just being oblivious. But then things escalated. One Sunday I had a really bad pain day. I was at a 7 or 8. I used my cane. I parked in the handicap spot. I limped through my shift. Casey saw me. She didn't say anything, but she was watching. I found out later she had been watching me for weeks. A few days after that Sunday, my boss Amy called me into her office. She looked uncomfortable. She said, "I need to show you something." She pulled up a video on her phone. It was me walking through a grocery store parking lot the previous weekend. I wasn't using my cane that day because my pain was lower, maybe a 4 or 5. I was walking normally. The video was clearly taken from a car. My license plate was visible. I asked, "Where did you get this?" Amy said, "Casey sent it to me. She said she wanted to prove you're not disabled." I felt sick. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just sat there staring at the screen. My hands were shaking. I said, "Amy, you know I'm disabled. You've seen my paperwork. You've seen me use my cane on bad days. This is insane." Amy nodded. "I know I'm going to HR, but I wanted you to see it first so you're prepared." That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Casey following me. Did she know my schedule? Had she been watching my house? I checked my car for trackers. I didn't find any, but I wasn't sure. I called my friend and told her everything. She said, "You need to file a police report." I did. I went to the local precinct the next morning. The officer listened to me, but his face told me everything. He said, "Ma'am, do you have proof that she took the video? Was she on your property?" I said, "She filmed me in a public parking lot. That's not illegal." He shrugged. "It's not stalking unless there's a pattern of threats. Right now it's a workplace issue." I left feeling dismissed. HR took it more seriously. They interviewed Casey. She admitted she took the video but said she was just concerned about workplace fairness and that I was taking advantage of accommodations. She claimed she saw me carrying heavy boxes on a day I said I had chronic pain. I didn't even remember that day, but I told HR, "Some days I can carry boxes, some days I can't. That's the nature of chronic pain." HR said they'd issue a warning to Casey. That was it, a warning. I was furious, but I didn't want to quit. I loved my job and my team. Amy had my back, so I stayed. A few weeks later, I was at a gas station filling up. I noticed a car parked a few spaces away. It was Casey's car. She was sitting in the driver's seat looking at her phone. I pretended not to see her. I got in my car and drove home, but I was shaking. I started taking different routes to work. I stopped going to the grocery store near my house. I felt like a prisoner in my own life. I told Amy. She said, "I can talk to her again, but legally she can be in the same gas station as you." I knew she was right, but it didn't make me feel any safer. Then about a month later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Casey's lawyer. She was suing me for defamation. She claimed I had told HR she was a stalker and that it damaged her reputation at work. I couldn't believe it. I was the victim here and she was suing me. I called a lawyer. He said, "This is baseless, but it's going to be a headache. You need to document everything." I started a spreadsheet. I logged every interaction with Casey, every time I saw her car, every comment she made. I took screenshots of my pain journal. I saved my medical records. I even got a note from my doctor explaining my condition in detail. The lawsuit dragged on for 3 months. Casey's lawyer kept trying to get me to settle, but I refused. I wasn't going to admit to something I didn't do. Meanwhile, Casey was still working at the same location. Amy tried to keep us separate, but it was impossible. Every time I saw Casey, my heart raced. I felt like I was the one being punished. The court date finally came. I sat in the small room with my lawyer. Casey was there with her lawyer. She didn't look at me. The judge asked to see the video. I described it, me walking in a parking lot, no cane, moving normally. The The judge said this is the evidence of defamation. Casey's lawyer argued that my statements to HR were false and malicious. My lawyer pointed out that I had medical documentation and that Casey had already been warned for stalking behavior. The judge dismissed the case. He said, there is no evidence of defamation. This is a workplace dispute that should have been handled internally. Casey's lawyer tried to appeal, but it was denied. After that, I expected Casey to lay low. Instead, she got worse. She started spreading rumors to other coworkers that I was faking my disability to get special treatment. Some people believed her. I could feel the looks, the whispers. One coworker who I considered a friend said to me, "Hey, no offense, but you never look that bad. Are you sure you need the handicap placard?" I walked away before I said something I regretted. I went to Amy again. Amy said, "I'm going to escalate this to corporate. This is a hostile work environment." And she did. Corporate launched an investigation. They interviewed everyone. Casey's behavior was documented by multiple people. Even some coworkers who had initially sided with Casey came forward and said they felt pressured. A month later, Casey was fired. She was escorted out by security. I wasn't there that day, but Amy texted me, "She's gone, you're safe now." I cried. I cried because I was relieved, but also because it took so long. It took a lawsuit, a stalking accusation, and months of anxiety for anyone to finally believe me. But here's the update. Casey didn't stop. I started getting anonymous messages on social media. Accounts with no profile pictures calling me a liar, a faker, a fraud. I knew it was her. I blocked every account, but new ones kept popping up. I reported them to the platforms, but nothing happened. I deleted my social media for a while. Then, about 2 weeks ago, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photo of me standing at my front door. I was wearing my male uniform, holding my cane. The photo was taken from across the street. I didn't know when. The back of the photo had a note written in Sharpie, still faking it. I felt a cold chill. I called the police again. This time I had a pattern. I had the video, the lawsuit, the social media harassment, the photo. The officer listened and said, "We can file a report for harassment, but without proof it's her, there's not much we can do." I said, "It's obviously her." He said, "We can't prove that." I felt hopeless. I told Amy. She said, "I'll talk to our corporate security. We can get a restraining order against her if she shows up at the store." But I don't know if that will help. She's not showing up at the store. She's showing up at my home. I've changed my locks. I installed a Ring camera. I told my neighbors to call me if they see her car. I don't go out alone after dark. I'm living in fear because of a woman who couldn't accept that someone else was disabled. I still have chronic pain. Every day is a battle. But now I have an added layer of stress, wondering if Casey is watching me from a distance, ready to take another photo, ready to send another letter. I know I'm not crazy. I know I'm not faking. But some days I look in the mirror and think, is it even worth it? Should I just quit the part-time job and disappear? But I can't let her win. I can't let her take away the job I love, the routine that helps me manage my pain, the community I've built. So I'm staying. I'm documenting everything. I'm hoping the police take it seriously if she escalates again. If you're reading this and you have an invisible disability, know that you're not alone. People will doubt you. They'll follow you. They'll try to prove you're faking, but your pain is real. Your experience is real. Don't let anyone gaslight you into believing otherwise. And if you're the type of person who takes video of someone with a disability to catch them being healthy for 5 minutes, get a life, get a hobby, get therapy, because you're the one who needs help. That's it for now. I'm still waiting for the next shoe to drop, but I'm not backing down. I thought that was the worst of it, but then another story came to mind. This one was about a wedding. And it taught me that sometimes the people you love are about to make the biggest mistake of their lives, and you have to decide if you're going to speak up or watch it happen. I've known Mark since college. We were in the same study group, same friend circle, same late-night debates about philosophy and which pizza place had the best slices. Mark is one of those people who always has to win an argument, not in a mean way, but he's just extremely logical and articulate. For the first few years when he started dating Laura, I thought they were fine. She was shy, reserved, a little quiet for our loud group, but she seemed sweet. Mark was happy and that was what mattered. Fast forward to grad school. They got engaged after about 4 years together. We were all thrilled. My girlfriend Julie and I started double dating with them regularly. That's when Laura started opening up more. At first, it was great. She had opinions, she joked around, she seemed like a real person instead of a shadow. But then the cracks started showing. Laura was anxious about everything. The wedding planning became a nightmare to hear about. She'd complain about Mark's parents for hours, how they offered to pay for the flowers and she said that was control. How they invited her to a family dinner and she called it intrusive. She aired every single argument in front of us. Mark would sit there, his jaw tight, clearly wanting to change the subject, but she wouldn't stop. One night, Julie and I went over for dinner. Laura had been drinking a little and she started talking about their sex life. I'm not exaggerating. Said, "Mark doesn't understand what I need in bed, he's too logical." I looked at Mark. He was staring at his plate. I quickly changed the topic, but the damage was done. The bigger issue came up a few months before the wedding. We were all at a barbecue and the topic of kids came up. Laura said, "I don't know if I want kids, they're messy and expensive." Mark said, "I always wanted kids, we talked about this." Laura laughed it off and said, "People change their minds, you'll change yours." Mark didn't laugh. After that, Julie and I started hearing more. One night, Laura admitted to Julie that she wanted to explore an open relationship after marriage. She said she felt like she missed out on experiences. Julie told me and I felt sick. Mark was a monogamous, traditional guy. He wanted a family. They were on completely different planets. I debated what to do. I didn't want to ruin his happiness. But a month before the wedding, I saw them argue at a party. Laura screamed at him in front of everyone, called him controlling, said he was trapping her with the wedding. Mark looked defeated. I pulled him aside later and asked if he was okay. He said, "I don't know, she's been getting worse. I think she's just stressed." I wanted to say more, but I chickened out. The day before the wedding, I called him. I said, "Mark, I need to tell you something. I'm not trying to ruin your life, but you need to know what Laura told Julie about wanting an open marriage." There was a long silence. He said, "She told me that too. She said it was a joke." I said, "It wasn't a joke. And she doesn't want kids, you do." He said, "I know, I've been hoping she'll change her mind after we're married." I didn't scream, I just said, "Don't marry someone hoping they'll change." He thanked me, but I could tell he was going to go through with it. They got married. I went to the wedding. It was beautiful. Laura smiled the whole time. Mark looked happy. But 6 months later, they were in couples therapy. A year later, they separated. Last I heard, Laura moved to another state and Mark is dating someone who actually wants kids. I still think about that phone call. Sometimes you can see the